Hey guys, it's I'm Salvation, and in this video I want to go over the content update 2.6 balance changes that were posted recently on the forums. I won't go over every detail and just talk about those things that stick out to me. So first off, we have the improvements to the passive tree. There are lots of little details mentioned, not going too much into that. I only want to say that it's really nice that they are changing up the passive tree. The passive tree has been as it is at the moment for a very long time, and I'm really appreciate that they are changing this up for the Legacy League. Some of the things that they mention also sound really good, like weapon elemental damage clusters in the ranger area, and mana added behind Mind Over Matter. That is really nice and was asked for a long time. One big thing is that the Vitality Void and Spirit Void cluster will be connected to the outside of the tree. That was often really bad passing you had to do there if you were not coming from the ranger area. Then the next big thing is that the leech nodes in the shadow area will now work for all attack damage. Those were the last ones that only worked for physical damage, I think. And now they will work for all attack damage. That is pretty huge, because for not so much for the life leech, but it's pretty big for the mana leech, because you now have an option to sustain mana without going down to the duelist. So for example, for an Inquisitor build, it was often really long to pass down to the duelist nodes just to grab the mana leech, because there was like no other option to sustain your mana if you were a pure elemental attacker. You were going to the shadow nodes pretty much all the time anyway, because of the power charge and all the crit in that area and elemental damage in that area. So it's pretty nice. Also note that the mana leech nodes are very close to Ghost Reaver, so any build that travels to Ghost Reaver can grab pretty easy mana leech now. I guess that will be a big change. Life leech isn't that substantial, because it's only 0.4, and that is most of the time not enough. It's nice to have if you grab them anyway, but you will only grab them if you are a life build. It won't do all the leech you need. Like, it's a nice supplement, but it's nothing too major. Then they are also changing the Master of Force and the Ash, Frost and Storm clusters. Those were pretty bad for a long time. I don't know if anyone ever took those clusters, because the values were just too low. And now they say that they will add reflect protection to the damage type to those clusters. Personally, I think reflect is pretty overrated anyway, and it's not such a big deal as some people make it. And if you play a build that has really big problems with reflect, then most of the time small values of reduced reflect damage won't do much. So I hope these are also included in the many other changes have been made to passing, positioning and values to improve underused passive skills. So I hope they are also upping the values of Master of Force and Ash, Frost and Storm. The next big point is the elemental conversion. And I talked about this before in my impossibility of balance video, and it seems came to the same conclusion that I had in that video, that it's too easy to convert especially cold to fire, and that this makes the balancing of cold skills really bad. And so they are changing some conversion values on unique items like Pyre and Call of the Brotherhood. I guess it's a really good step in the right direction to buff lightning and cold skills, because if it was too easy to convert, you always had to balance with that in mind, and that made the non-convert version just bad. So if it's now not so easy, they could maybe up the values, and I really hope that lightning skills or lightning spells and cold spells can gain some power back. Then there's a unique item balance. Over 100 uniques have been rebalanced with a focus on improving underused uniques, and that is, of course, we will see how good that is, but it's certainly something to look forward to find some of the old trash uniques, and maybe now you find a use for them. So yeah, really looking forward to see what changes they made and what uniques they went over. Here comes the next point, and that is one-handed weapon damage and weapon implicits. So overall, they changed a lot of the damage values on the one-handed weapons to make them a bit better. I feel like it wasn't that necessary on swords. They changed, as far as this reads, they changed everything except daggers, because daggers were pretty widely used. I think swords were also in a pretty good spot. The implicit on the non-crit swords was pretty bad. The crit swords were pretty okay, but yeah, crit swords also got nerfed because they reduced the critical strike multiplier you would gain as implicit. Overall, it's a good thing, because things like one-handed axes, one-handed non-crit swords, or one-handed maces were in a pretty bad spot because the damage just wasn't there. Then there's a point about daggers, and yeah, daggers were pretty prevalent for attack builds and for caster builds and everything, so I guess there was a need for some change. They lowered the implicit values. Previously, daggers granted 40, 60 and 80% increased critical strike chance, and these values have been changed to 30, 40 and 50. They say this is to reduce the impact specific base types had on weapon choices and lower the power of the standout critical caster weapon base type. In my opinion, this is a really, really bad change, and it's in the completely wrong direction. Because what's the point of having different bases if they are all the same and you don't care what base you are wielding? I mean, it was already pretty uninteresting before, when you had, like, the caster dagger had 40% more critical strike chance, and that was everything that was different. And now they have 20% more critical strike chance compared to a attack dagger or an attack dagger base, and that's all they change. I think they should differentiate the weapon bases a lot more, so that it's a lot clearer that this is a caster dagger, like giving these daggers a higher chance to roll caster mod, or even give them some specific caster mods that the attack daggers can't roll. And let's be real, the 80% daggers and the 60% daggers, they were already pretty bad base types. For attack builds, no one used them. I mean, of course, maybe someone used them if they found a really good one with really, really good rolls. Of course, they will use them. But it wasn't like anyone was looking for those or trying to craft those for an attack build. So I really don't know what they want to achieve with that change. I mean, they could have went in a direction if they really wanted to impact the caster dagger thing. They could have made it like that the caster dagger bases, the 80% bases, could not roll attack speed or something like that. So that makes them worse for attack builds, of course, and it will also make them worse for use with whirling blades, because they have pretty low base attack speed, and if they can't roll attack speed, they will have pretty slow whirling blades, and I think this is the really problem, or was the really problem. So I think this change is really, really bad and only makes daggers more uninteresting. And overall, that's like a thing that I did not like about Path of Exile, that the base type of the weapon isn't really important. And daggers had a pretty good differentiation, and they should have made this even more apparent, in my opinion, and not water it down like they did now. So I don't know if you are changing the base type so that it doesn't matter what weapon you are using, why even have different base types? So yeah, but talked enough about that. Next point is the area of effect changes, and that's a pretty long part here, and it basically says that they changed the increased radius of area skills to increased area. Basically means that investing less into them, or investing a bit into them, will yield about the same results, maybe a bit better, but completely stacking up the radius of area skills, or the increases to area, won't yield as good results as it does now. So that's an overall nerf to AoE, and they compensated for that with adjusting skills that needed this area of effect. They will now gain area of effect or radius of area for levels on the skill gem. And overall, I think can't say anything against that. The area you could get was pretty insane. And as long as skills that just took one cluster or something like that will get even better area, that's fine in my opinion. And they will also adjust the skill balance. There are only a few mentioned here, like Thunder now will deal more damage with the direct hits, but less damage with the secondary area. That's pretty okay. I mean, Thunder was not good on single target, and the AoE explosions were mostly overkill for trash mobs. So I guess this will address the problems of Thunder if someone wants to use Thunder as a main skill for the endgame build. Ice Crash had its damage increased. That's also really good. I really hope that Ice Crash got like a really big damage increase, because I like the skill. What I did not like was a small area of effect, and that it just felt like a worse version of Earthquake. And I have to say, to bring it up to the levels of Earthquake, they would really need to put a lot of damage onto it, because it was just so much worse than Earthquake at the moment, while it had like no upside. So yeah, looking forward to see the values for this. Then, as most would have guessed already, Blade Flurry had its damage reduced. Yes, that's no surprise. Blade Flurry was really overused in the last league, so no surprise here. I guess it will still be a good skill to use, because the mechanics of it are really nice for some builds. Not so many other skills that could compare to it on a mechanical point of view. So I guess the builds that used Blade Flurry can still use it, and they will have a bit lower power. So we will see how that turns out. Then 2 Vaal auras have been reduced in power. Vaal Haste has slightly lower values. Vaal Haste was pretty much a no-brainer. If you had no other Vaal skill to use, you just slap on a Vaal Haste and it will make you clear a lot faster. So yeah, I don't know what to think about that. And then the next one is Vaal Discipline no longer grants any bonus to energy shield. I guess that is mainly a result of Vaal Righteous Fire, or abusing this discipline thing, or builds using it to face tank bosses with really high damage. Well, Discipline was I was never such a big fan of it, because the duration is really short and you could get stunned during the cast animation. So yeah, you had to be stun immune to use it, and I wasn't a big fan of it. I guess it's fine because when it was used and used to good effect, then it was really overwhelmingly good, like making you almost invulnerable. Guess that change is good. A bit sad that they cut out all the energy shield. Maybe they could have changed it that you gain energy shield that does not scale with passives, so that it would be an option to use it on life builds to gain that extra life pool, but it would not be overwhelming on energy shield builds. It will still be good on summoners and trappers and all the builds that can't leech, just to start the energy shield recharge. And then they're changing existing threshold jewels. I really think that is a really good change, because until now threshold jewels needed 50 of one stat, and they all had to be allocated. So there was really limiting the available spots on the tree for those threshold jewels, and many of those spots were located in such a way that you had to take really bad travel nodes just to activate the jewel. Really welcome change, and in my opinion it will really open up the option to even use threshold jewels in many builds, because until now it was often such a bad trade, like trading the jewel slot and all the additional points you would need to activate that jewel for a pretty mediocre effect most of the time. And now if you don't have to allocate the passives, that's an entirely different thing. So there are a lot more spots because you only need 40 of the stat, and you don't need to allocate them. So they're a lot more open. It's a lot easier also to try them out, like just slap them in some jewel slots to see how they will impact your build and if you like it. So I think this is a really good change. And they're also changing some of the effects of the jewels, of the threshold jewels. Some are mentioned here, like the heavy strike threshold jewel now grants a 20% chance for double damage and is limited to 2. I don't know if they could do anything to heavy strike to make me use it, so I don't care much. The Viper Strike threshold jewel now also grants a 10% chance to gain Unholy Might on hit per poison stack on the enemy and is limited to 1. So that sounds really good. Unholy Might is a really strong buff, and if you can have that up like all the time, I don't know, they don't say the duration of the Unholy Might, but even if it's like 3 or 5 seconds, when you're constantly attacking, you will have it up all the time, and especially you will have it up all the time during boss fights, because you are constantly attacking there and stacking lots of poison stacks. So that will be a huge buff for Viper Strike. Overall, it's still a name locking skill. They also said in the area section that they will be improving melee splash and grant a lot more area of effect to melee splash, but I really don't enjoy playing name lock skills. Maybe I will try it again on like the second character next league, but yeah, we will see. Maybe it works out, but it's nice to see that they're at least giving them some power, because obviously name locking skills are mechanically worse than other skills that have area inherently, and so the name locking skills obviously need some power to compensate for that. Then there's the Vigilant Strike threshold jewel, grants allies 45 for 20 seconds up from 3 seconds. So I guess that's a thing for support builds now, or could become a thing for support builds. Don't know how support builds would feel of getting into melee range to hit some mobs to grant 45 to their allies. Not really sure about that, but it's an option. So in a few days we will get the full patch notes, and I'm really looking forward to that. It's a lot of things that we will see if they are even in the patch notes, like if they are giving us details on the updated uniques and stuff like that, or if they just update them and let us discover them. But even all the changes to the passive tree, that will be really huge to see them. And I'm really looking forward to that, and making character and planning out skill trees for the next league. And at the moment, I'm really looking forward to Mind Over Matter. I'm maybe thinking about doing something as Trickster with Mind Over Matter.
I hope you enjoyed the
And
video. If you did,
we
feel
will
free
see
to
how
like
that
and
will
subscribe.
work.